You are listening to This is Oklahoma, hosted by Mike Hearn, telling stories of Oklahomans and those that have made it their home.
This podcast is presented by the Oklahoma Hall of Fame, telling Oklahoma stories through its people since 1927. Follow them online at oklahomahof.com and definitely on Instagram at oklahomahof. Let's get into today's episode. What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of This is Oklahoma. Mike Hearn here, your host, back with another episode down at the Oklahoma Hall of Fame today with Oklahoma Hall of Fame inductee Paula Marshall. Congratulations on last year's induction. Super excited to dive into your story, hear all about your family business. But I'm a golfer, so we're gonna have to talk a little bit about golf and the up and coming PGA Championship.
Okay.
I'm sure you're thrilled about that. But first of all, I guess because it's recent, because it's still fresh, tell us about being inducted into the Oklahoma Hall of Fame and that kind of, what do you remember about that phone call and all of that process from last year?
Oh my, well, I didn't know a lot about it, so it was very secretive. Actually, I was just leaving the tennis club because we were still kind of in COVID, so the afternoon I was over there because I was president of that board, and we were having a meeting, and so as I was in my car leaving, I got a call from Matt, and Matt said, okay, I've got some really good news. It's going to be a surprise, but don't get mad at me, but I've got to put these people on the phone. And I'm like, what in the world what are you doing? What are you talking about? And so he puts the great folks from the Oklahoma Hall of Fame on the line. So he connected us, and they said, hey, Paula, just want to let you know, we've been working with your friend Kathy Keating and Matt here. They've got a whole bunch of great stuff to tell us about you and your career and everything. And we're putting you into the Oklahoma Hall of Fame. And I literally thought I was driving out of the club at that point, and I thought, I'm going to have a heart attack here. Like, it was nothing ever in my mind. And it was just such a, it was so great and inspiring and positive. And then after that, but it was such a, it was inspiring. It was a shock. It was a surprise. And the other thing Kathy kept telling me over and over, and I don't even know if this is important or not, but she said, nobody gets in this place on the first try. And I said, what do you mean? She goes, no one. And I said, well, I said, I didn't even know you guys were doing it. And she goes, that's why we didn't tell you, because if you didn't get in, we didn't want you to be all upset.
Right.
And so I said, oh my gosh, I never even dreamed that. So I was also like kind of blown away that had happened on the first try. So
yeah,
it must have been a good year.
Definitely. And obviously you have a great friendship with Kathy, because Kathy introduced you that night, to be inducted.
Yes, Kathy, we have a lot of great tales, and a lot of them were when she and Frank were in the governor's mansion, and we used to come over, and it's hard to be the governor's wife and be a free spirit like Kathy is and like I am. And so we'd go to have lunch in the mansion. Frank would come in, and I'm going to leave you girls. And then we'd just sit there and hoop it up all afternoon and, just have more fun. And she'd tell me stories, and I'd tell her stuff. And, we were just having a great time while she was in a position where maybe it wasn't so easy for her to laugh out loud and kind of be crazy a little bit.
Yeah, I can't imagine what it's like to be kind of in that life, right? You're like you said, it's the First Lady of Oklahoma, probably the right term, I guess, maybe.
Yes.
Yes. You're right. You're kind of under scrutiny everything you do, and you can't just kick back and hang out, like in general public life like you'd want to. But of course, you can find a great time at the governor's mansion, kick back in that. You got great. I didn't realize the pool is shaped like the Oklahoma state flag until very recently.
Yes, the state of Oklahoma.
Kind of awesome. Yeah.
Yes, and she did a lot. She started the museum, and I would come down and we'd unpack boxes and all kinds of crazy stuff. And she found the most wonderful things that were made by people here in Oklahoma. The boots, I remember, I still kick myself because I should have bought that pair of boots that she found from this person in Oklahoma somewhere that had every little county and
that's
all
amazing.
kinds of things engraved into the boots, and you'll never find another. And she
Yeah.
told me at the time, but they were $700. And I thought, oh, Kathy, that's a lot. She goes,
Yeah.
you'll never find another pair of boots like this. And she's right.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the kind of thing that she used to do. And then she used to use the money for the mansion to upgrade and,
Yeah.
make it nicer for other people who were going to come there and
Yeah.
live there. So
Amazing. That's so cool.
we had a great time.
Yeah. So for people listening who might not know the story, we'll go back, set some context about your family's history and kind of the family history of the business too. Tulsa-based. I guess for you, what is, your earliest memory of kind of growing up around the family business and just being aware that my family has a business? It's, it's Bama Pie Company, and, was dad, dad might not be around, or mama, because they were so busy. I mean, what was kind of like your earliest memories?
Well, the early memories were like kids at school would ask me, what's your dad doing? What's your dad doing? And I always said my dad, is a baker. And then that would make people laugh. They would start laughing. And then, well, what does your mom do? And a lot of moms were staying home and that kind of thing. And so I'm like, oh, no, my mom goes down there and counts all the money. So I think what happened is they all thought I was just, my dad was just in this little bake shop and my mom was down there counting money. And I also knew that we were very involved after school. So a lot of times we didn't have babysitters. My mom picked us up at school and we came right down to the company and we either did our homework there. We got to know all the people that worked there, or my brother and I ran around in the factory because it wasn't running in the afternoons, because usually people were out of there by noon, because in bakeries people start, the old Dunkin' commercial about the guy at 3 a.m. I'm making the donuts. That's kind of the bakery business. And we would go out and play in the warehouse, which today would be like, oh my God, so taboo. We'd climb up on these bags of sugar or flour or salt, and we'd drive the fork trucks around, like literally 10-year-old and 11-year-old kids driving the fork truck around. What a nightmare. I mean, can you even imagine that?
Health and safety would have a
oh my gosh. People would be going, what?
Yeah.
And then we'd spin. We had these, the bowls that put the dough in, and you could spin them around and they'd go around real fast. And so either my brother would be in the bowl or I'd be out, in the bowl, and we'd have to spin each other, and we'd take turns spinning each other in the bowl till we all got dizzy. So we're climbing in these bowls that they're probably going to make dough in the next day with our tennis shoes and our clothes and our regular hand, no soap, no, bacterial stuff or anything. So, it was quite fun. I mean, I just remember it being a lot of fun and not anything like work. It was more like, oh, that's where we get to go play after school,
Yeah.
and drive around these big fork trucks. What a cool thing.
So awesome. So growing up, was there ever kind of like, was it, I think my path is destined for me, I'm going to be in the family business? Or, I mean, what was little Paula's dream at that point growing up?
Well, I was more of the kid in school who I liked playing sports, so I was kind of a tomboy, but I also was not a very good student. And so both my brothers were the really smart ones. And so I just kind of thought, who knows what I'm going to do, because I am not. Dad used to say, well, I hope you can find somebody to marry, because, there's probably nothing much you're going to do. Great positive attitude towards me, Dad.
Keep
Thanks.
enjoying yourself.
But again, that in the 60s, that's how it was. And so they're just hoping, that I can graduate from high school. And somewhere along 10th or 11th grade, I started realizing that I liked languages. I liked Latin for some reason, for a kid who's made straight C's all through, and all of a sudden you start making A's in Latin. It's like, what happened? Did someone come in and give her a lobotomy or something? So I started thinking, I took more Spanish, I took more French. I tried to start taking a lot of languages, and I always told my parents that I was going to go off and become a interpreter. And I was going to go to work at the UN. And that, I thought they used to look at me kind of funny, but I liked language and I liked speaking and communicating. So that I did know at an early age. But then the plan was no, we're not coming into the business. So the problem came in when my dad, about 1989, was on a business trip, and he started feeling bad, and he was getting a really bad case of indigestion, and so they took him to the hospital, and they ended up putting him in the hospital with a heart attack. And so my mom was very concerned, so they flew him when he was better down to Tulsa, and then he got a doctor here, and then he was getting open heart surgery as all of his valves were clogged, everything. Well, so my older brother was, of course, this is now going to fall onto him. Well, lo and behold, he has a heart attack. Like, he's 40 years old, and he goes into the hospital with chest pains. And so it's like, oh, my mom and I were like, well, she's like, you better get back over here. Because I was in school at that point in time, and I was like, oh, my goodness, what's going on? So, of course, I left. My other brother, he just basically told my mom, no, I'm not coming back. I'm just going to, everything's going to be fine. You guys can handle it. Yeah. Wasn't even interested in the company at that time. So here's my mom and I, going to the hospital every day, sitting and wringing our hands, trying to praying, that both my dad and my brother are going to make it. Yeah. Because now they have both had open heart surgery. Like, they're in the same hospital, different wings, different rooms, different floors. Wow. At exactly the same time, and I was 22 or 23 years old. It was this was like the most. It was the most awful thing that could have possibly happened. Yeah. Because I knew nothing about the business because I had been going this other direction, and my older brother was the one that had been in there working, and now he's down too. Yeah. So I came over, but my mom went to work every day. She knew everything. She was all good. And so when I got there, she's like, we're just going to have to, I don't know what to tell McDonald's, because they were like the big customer, like the huge guys on the block that we were working with most closely at that time. And my dad had a relationship with all the top guys, Ray Kroc and Fred Turner and all these guys that had developed the apple pie, the hot apple pie. And he was in the process of learning how to make it and building all these equipment and this huge freezer and all this stuff. And I walk in, I'm like, Mom, what are we going to do? This is kind of a big deal. And she's like, you just need to go out, help me outside. I've got all this other stuff covered. And the McDonald's people, when they come down, we just got to make sure everybody thinks that everything's covered. And I'm like, okay. I have no idea what's going on around here, but okay. So that's kind of was my, trial by fire. Yeah. And starting out with my mom and I sitting there, not, just, wow, like, what are we going to do? Right. We're praying on the one hand, and we're over at the hospital, 2 or 3 hours a day, and then we're back over at the company the rest of the time, and just trying to, keep it going until the boys got back. That was kind of the general plan.
Gosh, thrown in the deep end, big time.
Oh my goodness, yes.
And like you said, not just business issues going on. Your family's health is at
stake. My family
right?
is very ill. Yes, and we're in. Also, I have a sister-in-law, and they have kids, and there's just a lot of turmoil, drama. Everyone's in the hospital. And at that time, and it still is, I guess, but when you have total blocked, they hardly ever do open heart surgery anymore. But at that time, that's the only way they knew how to unblock. So both of them are in intensive care. Both of them are, have prognosis like question mark. We hope that these guys are going to make it. Yeah. And they both had total heart bypasses. Every single valve, every single thing was blocked. Jeez, that could be blocked. They had everything.
Gosh, it's wow. It's thrown in the deep end. Trial by fire is the way to put it, obviously, but
and unprepared. None of my training. I was in communications. Nothing about financials, business, profit and loss. Nothing. Yeah. No. My mom was a financial genius. She really was. But I had no idea what a sale was, where the revenue came from. I just knew we made these little pillow-shaped pies for these people that had these arches, and they had a few restaurants in Tulsa. And I sometimes went to eat there,
Yeah. God, that's mad, isn't it? So you're at Tulsa University at this point? Were you finishing
Oklahoma
up?
City University.
You're at OCU. Okay.
Yes.
Great. Yeah.
Yes.
So you got away from family a little bit and stretched your
Yes,
stretched your
I
legs
was all
down to
out of
OCU.
there. Everyone was happy and fine. I'm going to have something to do.
Yeah.
Because when you're the little daughter, everything's handled, so you really don't need to worry too much about all that.
Yeah.
And my dad wasn't worried about me, being okay.
Mm-hmm.
He was just hoping, that I'd find. They never thought of a career or anything like that. And I don't know if my parents just had low expectations of me, or if it was just that they were so busy doing what they did, so much focus on my brothers, that I was kind of, whatever, let's just hope she doesn't do something crazy,
So growing up then, I mean, at this point, you have a contract with McDonald's, so the business is doing, very well at this point.
My dad doesn't have a contract though.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's all handshake.
Got you. Okay.
Yes.
That makes sense.
And his handshakes are with these two guys, the two top guys. And now he has to be turned over to the purchasing department.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's... I would have loved... I mean, there could be a movie made about this, right? Like, it's
absolutely.
Be so, all
I've
the
thought
stories
about
you
it
have.
a lot of times.
The stories that you have from those days.
Because I love all those guys, and we're
Right.
all great buddies now. But at the time, they wanted me gone. I mean, they really were like, nope.
Yeah.
We got to do something about this situation. I mean, the minute they came down from Chicago, it's like, these two. I mean, Lila, we love you, and Paul is real good, but it's like we're not in.
This is a gentleman's club.
We're just not in.
Yeah.
We got to find somebody to buy this place.
How did your mom take that?
She was a little mad.
Yeah, a little bit.
She went, well, what makes you say that? And of course, she wasn't used to, fighting or pushing back. My dad handled all the relationships, so. When they came in, she was just very, we need to talk to, Paul's not really well, and we need to wait till he's better, and then I'm sure we'll all get together and have a conversation about all this.
Wow.
So she tried to put him off, as long as she could. And then in between going back and forth to the hospital, she and I were talking, and she says, it's about time you and I had this conversation. I mean, is this something you want to do? Because we've never really talked about it. She said, your dad and I have been talking about it, but, we just don't know what you want to do. And I said, well, I like the business. I like it. Yeah. I love baking. I'd like to learn a lot more about that. I think I need to know a lot more about the financial end of things, but I can take some classes for that or whatever. And she's like, okay, well, we're going to go to bat for you. Yeah. And this thing's going to probably get kind of ugly because the McDonald's guys want your dad to sell the company.
Right. Did they want to buy it from you?
They were going to send somebody in to buy it.
Yeah. And then they would ultimately have
one of the other
of
suppliers. They were going to find somebody that, another company that maybe one of the bakers or someone who was in, another line of business or whatever, they would send them in to purchase it.
God, how different would life have been if that would have happened?
Oh,
right?
Well, I sure wouldn't be sitting here today.
You might be overseas somewhere working for the UN. Yeah.
I would never be sitting here. I'll promise you that.
God, it's amazing.
I know. And I always say, it's God's destiny. That we're brought here. All we have to do is just find it, And so I look back on the early, love of languages, love of communication, studying all these communication skills and things, and how much that's helped me, in my leadership ability and being able to connect with all of our team members and ultimately customers. The early McDonald's guys didn't think too much of me, but as I grew a little bit more, and we went into these it was a very long, protracted discussion, kind of was put on we've got to see what's going to happen here. So we've got to see. So I was being watched very carefully.
You're in probation.
I was
right?
on probation for sure. And we just got to see if, can she just not screw this up, basically.
Right.
Is what happened. It was just all about not screwing it up.
Yeah.
And so they kept sending people in to talk to my dad. And at this point, at that point in time, they got out of the hospital, he and my brother. And then they go home, and they still, at that point in time, the doctors were like, oh no, you got to take it easy. It was like months, right? It's like, he can't do anything for months. So we're out there. As
little stress as possible.
Oh, exactly. And so we're out there and we're telling him, the McDonald's guys are coming in. My mom hadn't exactly shared, what they were saying. And so she's like, well, do you think you feel like meeting with them? Because they're coming in, they want to talk. And my dad's like, sure, yeah, let's get on with this. I'm going to just tell them we're going to have Paula running it, and that's that. And so when they came in, they went to the house, to my parents' house, and my dad was like, no, this is how the plan's going to go. I'm not going to meet with any of these people. I'm not going to talk to any of those guys. And they kind of sat up, and they were like, well, we really kind of demand that you do this because we're not certain. He goes, let me just tell you something. I was eating 3 squares a day before you guys got here, and I'll be eating 3 squares when you're gone. So you can just go out the door, and you can deal with her, or you can not.
Yeah. And
they were like, okay. So they left. And I was like sitting there in shock. I was like, oh my God, Dad, what have you done? And he said, you know what? We need to find out now. Let's find out now what they're going to do. And lo and behold, we didn't hear back from them for like 2 months. And then after that 2 months, a gentleman called me that had been appointed head of diversity for McDonald's. Mm-hmm. And this was like in 92 or early 93. And he said, I really think this can work.
Yeah.
And I said, wow, really? What changed your all's minds? He says, well, we really need some diversity in our supply base. And I was like, oh, really?
You are now the poster
said,
child for diversity for McDonald's.
I said, I didn't think it was because all of a sudden you had decided I was so qualified.
Exactly.
Even though by that time I had my degree, right. I had, I was going to grad school. And I thought, wow, okay, well, all right, let's go. So the criteria was that you have to own 51% of the stock, and then you have to have 51% of the operating decisions. So now we've got to go back to my dad and my mom and sit down. And so I researched, pulled down this paper about what diversity was, because they were clueless. They had no idea.
Yeah.
And so I said, okay, Mom, Dad, here's the deal. They're going to support me, but here's what we have to do. You have to sell me 51% of the company. I thought they were going to fall out of their chairs. And then you have to give me operating control. And they were like, gunk.
Trying not to give your dad another heart attack, right?
I know. I've said, Dad, I know this is so stressful.
Sorry.
But it had been about a year that we'd been going through all this, by this time. And so he said, looked at my mom, and he's like, what do you think? And she's like, gosh, does that mean she can tell us when we can get our hair cut and stuff like that? She goes, what if she says no? I said, Mom, look, so we got another attorney involved, and we figured out some cash transactions that could go on in replace of, the ownership, and they had their nest egg, and then my dad was all pretty cool with everything after that. Yeah. So it was a long ride, though. The whole process took about 2 years to get the certification from an outside company, to get the diversity certification that you're truly a woman-owned business, and to share all that financial information, show it, get the certification, then go back to McDonald's and say, okay, I've done it, because under the 2 years was all this probation stuff, so anything that happened, that's like
it's on the record.
We're calling you in, you're going to be called on the carpet. And there was only 1 or 2 little things that happened, but both of them were my dad's fault, So we kind of like had to break it down. And that's where my whole journey with the quality effort and building quality into our processes and our systems and my work with Dr. W. Edward Deming came in to play, because I actually started down that journey of learning after we had some issues right as Dad was, getting ready to step out the door. And it was almost one of those, we told you so. But he ended up taking responsibility for the issue that happened. And he said, it was my fault, and I'm getting ready to walk out. I'm going to Florida. I'm leaving her with the whole business, and we're all good. Yeah. So he did. He kept to his word. He never came back and interfered in anything again. He never told me that what I was doing was wrong. He was very supportive. That's awesome. That was a turning point for me, at that point in time, because I started feeling like, well, maybe I do have the qualifications. Maybe I can do this. But one of the things that was interesting to me was when Dad left, he left this giant hole. He was always one of the people I was recruiting to come in to work when he was leaving. Asked me to draw an organizational chart. Well, we never put one of those down. I mean, why would you do that? You go to Dad for everything, right? Yeah. So I said, well, they said, what does your organization chart look like? And I said, well, it's an octopus with a big head. And then there's all these tentacles of all these great people around here that do all this stuff. And they said, well, then are you just going to put your name in there? And I said, oh, heck no. Why would I put my name in there? And they're like, well, you're now the new head of the octopus. I'm like, no, I'm not. So I started telling people when they would come in to talk to me, like they would come to my dad, I started telling them, like, look, the first thing I want you to know is I do not have the answer. Yeah. So that will be the first thing, is we're going to either figure the answer out together, you're going to figure out something and tell me what you think the answer should be, or we're going to go figure it out. And so people around the company started like going, what is going on around here? There's no more octopus. It's like this flat organization, and we're all working together to do stuff. So when I met Dr. Deming, it was like his philosophy was so much like that I was just drawn to work with him as a management philosopher and a leader, and adopted my leadership style and my philosophy totally after his tenets of management leadership.
Yeah. So is that, at that point, is that kind of where the growth comes from, is kind of just taking away, your dad's just like, Dad has the answer to everything and it's his way because he has all the answers, to we have a system in place now and anybody can run, somebody could come in here, look at the system, be like, okay, like we can do this.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's a lot more discipline. So I will say things had to be written down. So here's the difference in my philosophy and his, where people were like, who've worked for him for 30 years would look at me like, are you sure you want to do this? Recipes. For one thing, recipes was one of his, like, these things got written on paper towels and put in closets.
At least they were written down.
Some things were written down. I will say a lot of it was feel, and the flour came in, you put so many bags in, and then if you didn't like it, you added a touch of this or a touch of that. And there's only these mixer ladies that have been there for 40 years that know how to do it. And then there's this guy in the dip room that only knows how to make dip, and then these ladies make the filling, and they are the only ones that know, and they have a few notes scratched on the And I'm like, oh my God. So I get the ladies together, and these are ladies, and these are all these wonderful older African-American ladies. They're all giant. And they're sitting there in the room, they're looking at me, and they're going, girl, we're not sure about what you want us to do. You want us to write everything? I said, absolutely everything. Yeah. Got to write it down for me. They just couldn't bring themselves to do it. So I said, okay, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to bring the video camera. Girl, you're going to videotape us? I said, yep, I'm going to videotape. Come on, guys. Let's go down. Let's start making stuff. And I literally filmed them all for like this hour, this batch, and I go over this one. And I did this all myself because I knew that they wouldn't trust anybody else. Mm-hmm. And then when I got it all down, I put it on the little machine, and we just started writing everything down. And that was our first entry into like putting stuff into a computer.
Yeah.
I mean, we were all like making notes on pieces of paper like this. And even McDonald's was like, yeah, we like what you're doing. You know, you're modernizing, you're putting things on a computer. This is good. You're training people. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. You're being proactive.
We're being proactive.
Yeah.
And training was not something that any of those folks really believed in. They just, this is my job and I'll do it.
Yeah.
I would tell them, I'm like, well, what if you don't come in one day? Like, you know, honey, I've been here every day for 50 years. What makes you think I'm not going to come in?
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, what if you had a car accident or what if something happened?
Right.
You know, we're all getting a little older here. And they just thought, you know, once they kind of realized that we're going to keep going with this,
Yeah.
they all came to me and said, you know, I'd like to retire. And none of them had any retirement. So we worked out retirement for them and put some money away for them. And I just, I was so blessed to work with these great ladies that love my parents so much that they would literally die.
Yeah.
If someone came and asked them what the recipe was,
Yeah.
they would, I mean, you would have to like, they would die. I mean, it would be like Zelensky, you know. It's like, I'm taking the hill. I'm not leaving here, and I'm going to die with the recipe, you know.
It's just like a huge scaled version of like your nan's greatest recipes,
Exactly.
right? Like you're like, please write this down because I want this to last forever.
Exactly. I mean, just imagine that, you know, in those days they would have been, you know, at home cooking over these big frying pans and frying chicken, and nobody knows what's in it. And they're making gravy and biscuits, and the whole family's going. And then the recipes go away.
Yeah.
You know? And then I can't recreate all that stuff.
Yeah.
There's no way. So we just knew the bags of stuff that came in and went into these different little rooms. They had the doors shut. We knew what went in there. We just didn't know how much they were using. It'd be like your grocery shopping list and all the stuff's just sitting there on the counter, but you don't know if it's a spoonful or if it's a cup, you know?
Yeah.
And so that's where we were when I first started taking over, and I had to gain all the trust, and I didn't know all the answers. I didn't know any of the answers. And so gradually, slowly but surely, I just built that relationship with all my team members and our customers, to be honest. And I was willing to do things that my dad wasn't willing to do. You know, my dad he had a hard time trusting people. So when McDonald's asked us to go to China, for example, in 1999, I said, absolutely. You know, we're going. And they about fell out of their chairs, you know. So it's like all these things. Well, will you go put a plant in Europe? Sure. You know, and so we've got facilities all over the doggone world.
Yeah.
And I think nothing of it, you know, because I have these wonderful people. Would they do everything like I do? Probably not. Do they do a wonderful job? Yes. Do they come in and give us 110% every day? Absolutely. Yeah. Am I there every day? No, I'm not in Poland. No, I'm not in the UK. I'm not in Wales. I'm not in Belfast every day. But I trust them. And that was a big difference in my father and his philosophy and me. Yeah. Because he never wanted to grow outside of Tulsa, Oklahoma with his one little spot. And he knew everybody, and he knew what they were doing. He could come down any time of the day or night and check on every single person. Yeah. And we were dealing with a great big multinational company. Right. And they want you to go and do things and make investments in countries where they have stores. You can't do that all from Tulsa, Oklahoma. Yeah. So I think my relationships, as I grew in my relationships with McDonald's and with those folks, and I built the trust with them. So it's all about trust. Yeah. You know, my whole business model relies on trust. Yeah. And that's what I preach to my team now.
Oh, that's amazing. How does the initial, I guess, McDonald's happen? Like, how does Dad develop that? I mean, does McDonald's just come knocking one day? Like, how does that happen?
He was actually on a cold call. He used to put this pie that he was working on, because he had the vision that at some point when people came back from the war, when it was in the 40s and 50s, when he was growing up with his mother teaching him how to do stuff, everything was baked in a round pan. Yeah. And he was seeing all these people coming back and going to eat in the car. And so he kept saying, to his mom, if we don't have something they can eat in the car, we're going to be done here. So she thought he was crazy. So he went off, to Tulsa, Oklahoma from Dallas, Texas, and built this line to make these little pillow pies. And he would take them around because he was so convinced that this was going to be a deal that he drove everywhere in his caddy. Every week he stocked it up on Monday morning, pies in a cooler in the back in the trunk, 4 or 5 coolers, shut the trunk, off he'd go. We wouldn't see him till Friday, and he'd have orders in his hands. He'd have things that were going on. And so one day he called on Ray Kroc just as a cold call. He knocked on the door of the McDonald's Des Plaines, Illinois, and the guy answered the door.
Wow.
Like, what can I help you with?
Yeah.
And it was Ray Kroc.
God. Talk about putting in your hours, right? Talk about hard work and just, what is Gary Player's favorite quote, right? The more you practice, the luckier you get. It's a game of numbers.
It's totally numbers.
And that
totally numbers.
Then you build that relationship, and from there the orders continue and get bigger, and then they, like I said, back to trust. They trust you more, and then the production numbers just increase.
Yes, it builds on itself. And my dad, by that time my dad had met a lot of guys doing restaurants. He'd met a lot of guys like Ray who said they were going to do what Ray did. He met the guy who, started that Big Boy restaurant, the guy with the, the crazy burger on his hand. He's got the plate. I don't know. You probably don't even know what I'm talking about, but it's like something called Bill's Big Burger, and he's got this big, and he was going to put those all over America. Those guys with the red suits on with the plate holding the hamburger. And my dad would come home and he's just like, I don't know. That guy just doesn't seem like he's got it all together. And then he'd go work with another one, and then he'd go work with another one. And so when he met Ray, I think the combination of what he saw in Ray and his dogged determination, and my dad saw that in Ray. Yeah. And my dad had that too. My dad was like, if he was nothing else, he was doggedly determined. Yeah. And so I think when he met him, he decided to throw it all. And him and my mom got in more debt than they'd ever gotten into, putting in their first pie line and building the capacity, to fill all these restaurants that he said he was going to build. And then he started building them. Yeah. Because when my dad started with him, there was 5 or 6 restaurants. That was it. Wow.
Yeah, and back to what you just said, or your dad finds it hard to trust people. I mean, that obviously, it took a lot to find, when you find the one and you meet Ray, and that must have been a pretty great relationship to witness, is the fact that he does trust this guy, and this guy and him are going all in together, and there's one of the things that people don't realize is, the element of risk, right? Like you said, your mom and dad, go into a lot of debt just to develop the line.
Yes.
That's a huge risk, and they're risking, the house probably. Everything you have.
I'm pretty
right?
sure they had our house. Yes.
Yeah.
Cars, house, the building that we had that we were doing our retail pies out of. So this was a line that in a part of the, plant that didn't have anything in it. So it was going to eventually grow to overtake all the rest of the products that we were making, because we eventually had to put another line. We had 4 or 5 lines running in that one, our original facility at one time. And then for contingency purpose, we took a couple of the lines and moved them out to a new location, a brand new building that I built. And because they were very excited about us upgrading and putting in some automation and some robots and things like that. It was a big deal. And so, it's a thing where I think you just believe in someone, you just, maybe it's wrong, maybe it's right. I think if you looked at every single person in here in the Hall of Fame, there'd be something that would trail through their whole story, their whole history, and they met someone who was a life-changing person to them. Right. And so I believe that wholeheartedly, that my dad was destined to meet him, meet Ray. And I was destined at that particular time to, be introduced to their new head of diversity, who was looking, at the time I knew that that's why they were picking me, is because I was made sense to them, because I didn't have any, real runway with them. But I knew I could also convince them that it's not just a girl thing. Because I also knew if it was more than a girl thing, or less than a girl thing, what am I trying to say? But anyway, if it was just a girl thing,
yeah.
eventually I would fail.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Because you can't run a business that's that complicated if you're not putting the work in, you know, if you're not digging in, if you're not learning, if you're not, teaching people around you, the business will fail. And I think that McDonald's has seen that over and over and over when they've tried to build these diversity companies, that it's very difficult to just pluck someone out of one industry or law school or whatever and stick them in a McDonald's restaurant. Sometimes it's just not their gig, and it doesn't work.
Yeah, just because they tick the box and they have all the right paperwork and they look the right way, the way that McDonald's wants you to look. And when they came to you and said, you got that phone call from the diversity guy, they probably gave you, not that you already probably didn't have a chip on your shoulder and you're like, I can do this, right? People are doubting me. And then you get another guy's like, we're going to call you, because of diversity, we're going to give you a chance, right? We're going to keep supporting you.
Yes.
And you're like, thanks for the opportunity, but I'm going to show you what I really can do. Yeah. And then you go off and, like you said, you meet the doctor and develop that system, and it kind of explodes from there. And then, like you said, Dad didn't really want to risk much, but or outside of Tulsa anyway. And then you'd go, Nate, worldwide. But yes, we have the system.
Right.
Why does all we need to do is translate the system to whatever language we need to speak, and off it goes.
Right.
God,
and
amazing.
Through whatever happens, it's always about applying yourself to that situation and building those communications, building those relationships, trusting each other, and building whatever that is, because it's really the same, whether it's, you're learning to fly an airplane, or you're, learning to play a guitar and you're going to become a famous musician. You're going to put the time in. Right? Everyone knows you're going to play little honky tonks. You're going to go here. And somebody's going to stumble in one night that will see you, that will give you your big break. Yeah. And that's what you're always hoping to do, is make that connection by going out to enough places. And that's what I was trying to do. I was trying to make my connections by going to enough places that I could learn, that I could be seen as someone who is competent.
Yeah. It's exactly what I do with the podcast.
Yes.
That's exactly what I do. You, like you said, you hope you meet the right person who believes in the mission and believes in sharing stories and wants to be a part of it, wants to support it. And thankfully for me, the Oklahoma Hall of Fame is one of those partners, which is amazing to me. But tell me about, wanting to travel. Growing up being a little girl and getting into language and that passion, that little girl probably looking onto the future saying, now I have a plant in, 7 or 8 different countries around the world. Like, that little girl in you was so happy when they gave you the opportunity to go somewhere else.
Isn't that the craziest thing?
It's crazy, isn't it?
Because my love of languages, I get to travel to so many places. It's like, this is like the dream job, rather than being a UN interpreter. Yeah. I get to go and teach people how to do great stuff in a factory, and really provide food for people, because we sell 3.5 million pies every day, but McDonald's sells 25 million burgers every day. Yeah. And so it's the connection. It's like, I'm getting to step into this facility here, but what we're doing is creating magic on the other side. Yeah. Because those people that are visiting those McDonald's restaurants are bringing their kids there when they're happy, or they're sad, or they've had a birthday, or they want to spend some time, or a special event. It's that connection that I'm always selling in my company to my team members, is the next brand over. It's not, I know how you feel like this thing you're doing could be so mundane that you're doing it, 8 hours in a day, and you're moving around different places, but doing virtually the same thing. Think of that person over there on the other side that's getting your pies, or getting your hotcakes, or getting your biscuits. It's like, okay, now people start, oh, wow, I didn't think of that, And sometime during the 90s, we started making pizza. So we started doing business with Pizza Hut. And one of the reasons they were drawn to us was because of our McDonald's relationship.
Right.
Because they realized, okay, if you can make millions of those, you can probably make millions of this.
Yeah.
And so they just give you not a hall pass, but kind of a hall pass.
Yeah. We're
Just
going to give you a trial run.
automatic.
Yeah.
Yes, because we have confidence that we know you can do
handle
this,
it,
right?
yeah.
We make biscuits for Wendy's. We make their breakfast biscuits. Same thing.
Yeah.
We got a hall pass, and those folks who work there now had worked at McDonald's or had worked at Pizza Hut
They've
or
stayed
had
in
worked
industry.
somewhere else,
Yeah.
and Subway and other places. So they go, they bring their they bring their remembrances. They bring who was a great partner, who treated them right, who helped them. And so it's like, it's this cycle that you can never get away from. It's just always there. It's a life cycle.
That snowball effect, right? Like, you prove that you can handle, one of the biggest businesses in the world, McDonald's, you prove you can continue to satisfy them for, so many years now. And
I think 40 years maybe, or
Wow.
I didn't add it up before I came in here, but
Close
it's
to
a
it.
long
Yeah.
time. And I have people ask me all the time, and you don't have a contract with them? And I said, no.
Yeah. Handshake.
Handshakes.
God, it's amazing.
We still don't have anything written down.
Yeah.
That is not written down.
Yeah. That's and
All my recipes are, but not that.
There you go. Yeah. Yeah, because it would probably just make things awkward if somebody came to you and were like, look, I know we've been in business together for almost 40 years, but we need to sign this now. You're like, really? Come on, guys.
Yeah,
like,
they can't
You think
do
we're going to
it.
leave you guys?
It's too long.
It's too
They
long,
even have
yeah.
a phrase now at McDonald's, and they teach all the new executives come in there all like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
No contracts. They call it the three-legged stool, and that was phrases that came down from Fred. It came down from Ray, and it's like we're all going to hold the stool up. The stool is the restaurant and the food and what's going on in there, but the customer experience is the top.
Yeah.
It takes the company people, it takes the suppliers, and it takes the owner-operators. And that's always how they always speak of it, is we don't have all three legs of the stool in balance, working together without walls, without... Because, see, that's how my dimming philosophy also fit in with my relationship with McDonald's. There are no walls. You can deal with the franchisees directly if you want. You can work on improvement projects. You can work on new ideas. You can work on all kinds of things, and you can build those relationships. I mean, there's 8,000 or 10,000 of them, but you can, through the years, you can get around to the meetings and the conventions, things you can meet 4,000 or 5,000 of them. So all of those voices and all of those communications that are also always important go around also.
Yeah. It's amazing. You pop into a meeting once, and that person's in that meeting like, oh, the boss popped in today. Like that never happens, right? But like you said, you get around, you do that every, once a week or once a day, you just pop into a different meeting or jump on a call. And like I said, by the end of the year, you've met, 5,000, 10,000 of your employees that, some employees of some big companies, they never even met the boss, right? They have no idea who that person is.
I purposely go out to our all of our facilities. And I was in our Wales facility a month and a half ago, and literally people standing there with their mouths open like, who are you?
Yeah. They speak
One
funny
of the
over
guys
there, don't
was
they?
like, yes. One of the guys, one of the older engineers, he was so funny. He had gray hair, and he's like, now who are you? And I said, I'm Paula. I said, Paula Marshall. He goes, you the lady that signs my check? And I said, yes. He goes, no.
Yeah.
Really? I said, yeah, that's me. So I started walking on to talk to some other folks. Next thing I know, he comes up behind me and he goes, you really are her. And I said, yes, I am. He goes, I can't believe this. He starts walking around to all the people on the line, all the other maintenance guys. He's this gruff old maintenance guy. He's like gruff. And he's like, that's her. That's the boss. Can you believe this? That's the boss. That's what she looks like. She's here. She's right here in the factory. Yeah. It's like they run around and it's like, oh my gosh. And then they came up and followed us up to the canteen. I'm like, hey, have some pizza. They're like, you really do exist. We've never met a boss before. We've never met anybody like you.
Yeah.
I'm like,
Do you remember where in Wales what's the town that it's in? Do you remember the name of it?
We're in. Oh gosh, I can't even remember the little. We're in Wales, and when we fly in there and we drive to our factory, it's in a industrial park just outside.
South Wales or North Wales?
It's in North Wales.
Okay, so I'm from South Wales.
Okay.
So I grew up like 20 minutes from Cardiff.
Oh, I love Wales.
Yeah, all the castles and everything.
Yes.
It's great to visit, but I don't miss the rain because it rains all the time.
It was raining when we were there. Yeah. Yes. But we have a facility there that makes bread for Subway.
Okay.
And then we are now making pizza dough there. And then we're also going to be putting a McDonald's line in there. So it's kind of.
I had no idea. That's so good. Yeah.
Yes.
Brilliant.
And the people there are wonderful.
Good golf courses
Wonderful.
too. That's some great golf.
Some great golf, yes. And then we also have a facility up in Belfast.
Gotcha.
So when Brexit came in, McDonald's kind of panics, and so we put a couple of lines in up there in Belfast, and that's a really cool town as well.
That's another thing. I mean, we won't dive into it, but just to point out, like, you have to navigate all of the stuff that's going on around the world, you know, with supply chains and issues and, you know, just whatever's going on. It's, you know, it directly relates to you, and, you know, a lot of people probably are unaware of that stuff.
Yes,
but,
the truck drivers situation, the supplies showing up or not showing up. The relationships that we have with our vendors, because I've tried to pattern our company and our supply chain relationships after what McDonald's has taught me.
Sure.
So we have a lot of very long-standing partners, big flour companies or very small, you know, palm oil companies. It's very diverse supply chain. But you know, every year we have a big dinner, and we invite all of our top 50 suppliers in, and we, you know, talk about the business, and we give them a chance to interact, and we have something to say about everybody that's there. And so it's just, you know, those are things that people remember. They go out of our dinners and things, and they just shake their heads and are like, never been around anything like this.
Yeah.
And especially now, you know, with COVID and other things, people feeling a little lost, a little forgotten, a little not important. But because so many people are sitting in front of their screens, it doesn't mean that the work still isn't getting done. So you've got to get out from behind that screen and go
socialize,
and just touch.
people.
You got to touch. Because once people know you, if they know me, if they've met me, almost everyone in my Poland facility do not speak English. Only my top managers do, but every single one of them knows me, and they know when I'm coming. They know when I'm getting ready to walk around. And all they wanted to do when I was there last time was, because the bombing had just started in Ukraine, all they wanted to do was talk to me about how can we start helping our Ukraine friends. And so we organized a couple of efforts with some local orphanages that we knew were going to be getting some refugees. And I'm just like, let's go to Kmart, you know. So everybody got money, and we all went off to it's not Kmart, but it's like it's their version of Kmart. Bought blankets, bought baby diapers, bought formula, bought, you know, clothes, bought everything we could buy. Probably spent $2,500 or $3,000, whatever it was. Put them in boxes, took them over to these orphanages. I mean, it made people were crying. I mean, people were like just so upset, you know, and crying. And so when you can touch people through that mechanism as well, through the volunteering and helping others, then they see your company as something bigger. It's a spiritual thing almost, rather than just a company where I come and do stuff. Because I'm always trying to help people understand that what we do is bigger than you know, it's about the customers on the other side of McDonald's or Pizza Hut, and helping improve their day and what they're going through, rather than us mundanely making a piece of pizza dough. It's something more special than that.
Yeah, because you know, you've been blessed, and the family's been blessed with everything and the timing of everything.
Yes.
You know, and like you said, it's you know, it's you just keep the cycle going, don't you?
You keep the cycle going, and I've got a daughter and a son. My daughter wasn't as interested. She went to law school. She helps us with our, you know, on our family foundation, and my son is actually in the business. And he's 24 or 5 right now, and I always like to remind him, we're giving him little assignments, you know, while he's finishing school.
He's on probation.
He's on probation. I always like to remind him, I'm like, you know, I was doing the whole job. I was doing this job when I was your age, so let's, you know, get out of the pity house, Oh, I've got all this schoolwork. Oh, I've got all this. I'm like, I don't want to hear it. We got to keep the cycle going.
Yeah.
And he gets it. My kids really do get it. So they really do appreciate that spirit and keeping that fun alive and keeping that love going. And that's what our jobs are.
Oh, definitely. And to that point, like I know, both of us, well, obviously we're golfers, but a mutual friend of both of us is Ainsley Stanford, whose son Chip was on, the team that went to Arizona, the PGA Junior League team.
Yes. Oh my goodness.
So I heard from him all about you and how amazing his son is at golf, and the whole team.
And my best friend, who's the coach of that, who her son is on the team and was recruited.
They did so good.
Oh my gosh, you're kidding!
They did so
I was
good.
there. I got to go. I was so
Oh,
excited.
I heard all about it.
Oh, we all went.
But my point in that is, I kind of wanted you to talk about kind of like giving back, right? And not just in golf, but to women in entrepreneurship, and because obviously, like back to the point we've been talking about, McDonald's came to you with saying, because of diversity, we're going to give you a chance. And obviously how that has evolved over the last 30, 40 years, and how we've got multiple women in great positions leading companies, not the mega positions, but how you go about now that you're kind of, obviously you're still in the leadership role, but now that you can have more time to go out in the community and share more stories, and that part of you that I sense that you really, really do enjoy doing that. But that giving back side, tell me a little bit about, kind of how much that, it impacted you personally, but also just giving back to golfers, the younger generation, whether it's sporting abilities and just, jumping on a plane to go give them, to watch them play, or giving a class to young college girls or guys who are just into entrepreneurship.
Oh my goodness. Well, my personal mission that I worked on a long time ago is to love and honor every soul. So it's important to me when, when someone can articulate what it is they want to do and they have a passion around it. And even if it doesn't really have anything to do with, our work at Bama, I'm always interested in hearing. So one of the things besides the golf, which of course one of my best friends, it's her son, of course and we've been playing golf with him since he was like 2 years old. I mean, dragging a little plastic club around. So I got introduced to a guy who's got a band in Tulsa. You probably heard of it, the Hanson Brothers. Taylor Hanson, right? So
they made one really, really good song.
Really good, but they got
everyone
a lot
knows.
of good ones.
Everyone
now.
knows the one song, but they're still touring. I would love to interview them one day. I'd love to interview them.
Oh my God, Taylor is now he's turned into one of my really good friends.
Amazing.
So he's had this vision, and I also, weirdly enough, had a vision to put in a community garden on some of the Bama properties somewhere, because I felt like it was so important, because I wanted our team members to learn where the food actually comes from.
Right.
Because so many of our younger people that come in now have no idea. They live in very impoverished neighborhoods. There's no way to get food. They're in food deserts, etc. So we constructed this great big plot of land about a half a mile from one of our facilities, and we had the whole thing laid out. And one of my plant managers came to me at the time, and he said, Paula, I'm all for this vision, but I just want to tell you, we're trying to do what we can to keep these kinds of things away from the factory, like bugs and rodents and little minor things that come in from gardens. And I was like, oh my gosh, I never thought of it. Never thought of it. So my VP of HR and I were going out to kind of going to different fundraisers, and we went to this thing called New Leaf. Sorry, it was called New Leaf. It was a big organization in Tulsa, where the handicapped folks do the flowers. They make the flowers, and they pot them, and then they grow them, and then they actually put them together in baskets, and they sell them, and it's a beautiful, beautiful thing. And so we went to this fundraiser, and I got introduced to the guy who was director of New Leaf, and he happened to be sitting with Taylor Hanson. And so, they're all like, well, what are you guys doing here? And we hadn't seen you at these, this fundraiser before. And I'm like, I really want to put in a garden, but I don't want to do it. I can't do it at the factory now. I've got to abandon that plan. And Taylor looks at me like, what? And Kevin looks at me like, what? We've been trying to figure out a place we could put in a community garden. See, now there you go again.
Timing.
And I'm like, how would I have ever met these two people? I never, ever. But we were out searching for a way that we could hook up with one of these not-for-profits and put in, put in a garden. So we started talking. We started meeting. We ended up buying a 5-acre plot of land in North Tulsa where the food desert is. We're launching this thing. It's a $10 million project. It's incredible. In 2 years, I hired Kevin away from New Leaf. Taylor comes out now. We do fundraisers. We're raising all this money. We're teaching people about aquaponic gardening. We have volunteers coming out. We're starting grow beds. This thing has exploded. And we get calls all the time for people that want to come out, see the grow beds. Can we come out and bring our kindergartners out? So now we're starting to talk about an education building. So now I've got to raise $3 or $4 more million. But it's this is what we do, right? And so now one of our major charities in Bama is Food on the Move, we call it. And almost, I would say probably 70% of my team members at Bama go out there at least once a week and volunteer, or they go out on a weekend, or they take one of their days off and go out there and they just plant. And they're learning about the grow beds, and they're learning about these aquaponic gardens. And I'll tell you, the other day I burst out into tears, honestly, because we were out there we just had a pod delivered from the aquaponic garden guys. And we've had this aquaponic garden running over at this middle school. A lot of very low income kids there and a lot of dropouts. This boy, I got introduced to this boy running the aquaponic garden, and Kevin said, I just want you to have, Joe or whatever his name was, I'm sorry, I can't remember it, take you around and tell you about the garden and what he's doing and this and that and this and that. I'm thinking this guy's like some Nobel scientist, the way he's talking about all this stuff in here and what happens and the fish down at the bottom, and when they do this and this creates a sulfate or a phosphate or this, and I'm looking at him going, wow, look at you. And we're walking around the garden. I'm like, oh, honey, this is the greatest thing. I love this so much. Thank you for volunteering. I love it, love it. So I come out and I'm walking down with Taylor and Kevin Harper, and they start telling me about this kid. And they're like, he's in school right now because of the garden. And I said, well, what was going on? He's like, he's got his grandmother's raising him. There's 14 kids in the house. There's no male figure. He's come out there. He was going to drop out. He was already being recruited by the gangs. He was done with school, just done. These are the kinds of kids that we want learning about gardening, about agriculture, about farming, about it's a job. It's a job you can do. Anyone can do it. And these aquaponic gardens can be set up in schools. They can be set up in apartment complexes. If we can engage the kids and the people around to what's going on in inside this little pod, it's incredible. It's an all-encompassing one food system that could literally feed like families with fish and then with all these fresh vegetables. And this kid is like, I was like bawling after Taylor and Kevin told me about this kid. They're like, he was going to drop out of Monroe. And I said, see, guys, this is why we're here.
Yeah, that exact example.
This is why we're here.
Because there's so many more kids like that, right?
There's
it's just
tons of them, and we just want to keep building it and helping them, And so it inspires us to keep going, because there's so many of these things needed in those communities.
Yeah. It's powerful, and like you said, it's just not just in Tulsa, but this happens around all your facilities. Like I said, you do stuff in Poland for Ukraine, and I'm sure there's a million other examples of you guys just giving back to the communities that you're in and the impacts that you have. It's it goes a lot further than just making and selling pies and biscuits and pizza.
Yes, it does. Right? That's why our mission statement is people helping people be successful. That's why it is what it is, because we know our job in life is not just to give you something, but to help you be successful, no matter what it is.
Yeah,
it could be anything.
Yeah,
we don't care.
No, not at all. Let's talk about Tulsa and the PGA Championship.
Okay.
Because you've had a hole-in-one out there, I hear, right?
I did have a hole-in-one out there.
Was that end of last year?
It was 2 years ago, actually.
Okay. Yeah.
It was maybe like right before the pandemic started.
Yeah.
There were some, I had one of my friends had some clients in town. She had too many to just be in her group. So she asked me if I'd come out and play with. So I show up. I have no idea who these guys are. I've never met any of them before. So we're going around and we're playing, and I hit this ball. So we get to the 10th hole, famous par 3. It's it's down in a big valley, so you got to hit over everything, and it's easy to get it to run off. And so I always try to hit to the front of the green and let it roll across. And this particular day, the flag was in the very back, sort of on the, if I was looking north, it would be on the northeast side of the green. So the ball had to travel all the way up and then take that ridge, and then, not very likely, right? So everybody's teed off, and then they come down to my tee, which, as you know, and girls is like boys are way back there. So I take my club out, and I'm warming up, and so I hit it, and I see that it hits the front of the green like it's supposed to. And it starts rolling, and all of a sudden behind me I hear my caddy going, "It's going in. It's going in. It's going in." And I turn around to look at him, and I'm like, "Will you shut up? Like, it is not. It's going to do what it always does. It's just going to roll." And by the time I'm like standing there arguing with him, all those guys that I'd never met are going, "Oh my God, I heard it!" And I didn't even see it.
Oh, brilliant.
I missed my own hole-in-one. So, that's typical. But, then you get a big deal, a lot of drama. Yeah. Everyone comes down to the hole. The club manager comes down. The club pro, everyone's come, pictures. Yeah. And it was like, then you've got to start getting your wallet out, because then you got to start buying drinks for everyone around.
Yep, open that bar tab up for sure. Yeah.
Then you get your picture in the paper and all that kind of stuff. So it was, I will never forget it, obviously. But I know people that have had no holes in one. I know people that have had 10 or 12.
Yeah.
But I really do think it's the luck of the draw that day.
100%. Yeah,
it's just the luck of the draw.
Yeah, it's totally
like when you saw some of those shots at Augusta, and you see them rolling in, it's the luck of the draw.
Yeah.
I mean, there's just, you could stand there and put that shot on there 100 times and it probably wouldn't go in.
Yeah.
But that one time, it just happened to be in the right in the center, and it just dropped in. I mean, it was like dropped in. It didn't hit the pin and bounce out. Because I've had a few near misses. Yeah. I've had some that rolled up this close. I thought they were going in, and then I've hit the flag stick before, and it's dropped down, and then it pops out of the cup.
Yeah.
So I've had so many like where I was going, oh. But of course, the one that went in, I wasn't looking, because I turned around to tell my caddy, "Oh, will you just hush? It's not. Oh, come on, that thing's never going in. It never does. How many times have we done this?"
Yeah. Oh, brilliant. That's why I love golf. I mean,
I love it.
Played it my entire
life. And it was
life.
This crazy little pink ball that Amanda, my best friend, who's the golf coach with the son, had given me, and it's this crazy bright pink golf ball, and everybody was running up there going, "Oh, it's a bright pink golf ball. Oh, look at that. Ha, you hit a hole in one with a bright pink golf ball." And I'm like, well, I am a girl.
Yeah. Right. Like, it'd be different if I was using
that
golf ball.
Yeah. Right.
Do you have it framed? Is it in the office?
Yes.
Yep. Framed. Yep. Never lose
It's actually
that.
in my house where I look at it every day.
Definitely. Great memories. That's awesome.
They make a shadow box for you out at the club. And so you get it in about 6 or 8 weeks. At least at that time, it's probably
Yeah.
6 months now.
Right,
But
yeah.
the guys in the pro shop get all the pictures, and then they get the scorecard and circle it and all that,
awesome.
and they make a little thing
So
for you.
good.
It's pretty fun.
Yeah, and great for your guests too. Like to see.
Oh, they were just
had a great
like,
time.
oh my gosh, this
Yeah.
is the greatest thing ever. We come to Southern Hills, we got to have free drinks,
Yeah.
get the golf cart out there, have the Club Pro come out, have the
full
manager.
experience.
I mean, they're
Yeah.
like,
Amazing.
this is a great day. They were
Yeah.
all excited.
What a day. That's so good. Do you have any involvement through the company with, like, are you a part of anything being a close Tulsa company? Have they kind of, like, how does that?
We bought a chalet.
Yeah.
And we're sharing it with another company in town. So I've got a lot of people that
Everybody's asking you for tickets.
all my
Everybody,
great
yeah.
customers and buddies and
Yeah.
friends are like, oh, we want to come.
Because everyone plays golf in corporate, the
everybody.
world, right? The
In
corporate
fact,
world.
that's what my dad told me. He said, you can't play tennis.
You need to play golf.
You're going to go to these McDonald's conventions and no one's going to play tennis with you.
No.
So I said, okay.
Yeah.
Well, so he bought me a set of clubs, took me out to the pro, and I never learned bad habits. He goes, I'm going to take you out so you don't
from
learn
day
bad
one.
habits.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Build that foundation.
Yeah.
God, that's awesome.
So, and then Amanda, of course, changed everything around. So
Yeah. Yeah. Corrected everything. Because eventually, I mean, that's
you still
why
have bad
you
habits.
have bad habits all the
One
time.
coach to another, they don't teach the same. So you have to
No, you're
learn the
right.
other one's
Yeah.
style,
Brilliant. Yeah, I love it. I'm looking forward to coming up to see it. Looking forward to, just watching golf in person. Doesn't happen very often.
Yeah, well, if you're coming, let me know.
I would like. Yeah, I'll have to do that.
I'll give you my card, and you can get a spot there.
That would be amazing.
Good.
That would be great.
All right, we'll do it.
Thank you so much.
I didn't know you love golf. So Amanda will be in the tent.
Okay. Yeah.
She's going to be with the boys. Her husband Trey will be around, and then her twin sister Susie. So if you never met the twin sister, she's
I'll have to.
crazy
Yeah.
too. They're going to be in the tent too.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
we'll all be
that's how
hanging
I
out
ended
there.
up. That's how I ended up here. I came here to play golf in college, so that's why I met my wife and then stayed. So
Great.
still playing
That's
as much as possible.
Awesome. So did you play for OU or
No, I
LSU
played
or?
at SNU. So it's a
Okay.
small Christian
Okay,
place and
got
thing.
it.
But
Yeah.
met Ainsley through golf and all of
Yes.
his friends through golf. So
Yeah.
golf
Well,
has
my
been
brother's
awesome.
on the Hall of Fame wall out at OSU, out at the golf course out there. I love
That's awesome.
Karsten. We got
Yeah.
to. We're part of the original founders of that, and my brother's on the wall. So he was a
I was up there about
fabulous
a month ago.
golfer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to interview your brother now and do that stuff. But thank you so much
Thank
for coming
you.
down. This
Thank
has been
you.
an absolute pleasure.
How fun!
I don't often get to interview Oklahoma Hall of Famers who have, one, been to Wales, who have a business in Wales, who love golf as much as I do. So it's an absolute pleasure.
Thank you. Well, this has been wonderful and fun.
Yeah. Congratulations, obviously, on your induction last year.
Thank you.
I look forward to seeing you at all of the Hall of Fame induction dinners that you make it to. I'm
Absolutely.
sure you had a great time last year, and I'm sure you're going to continue.
I'll try
have
to
a great
make it
time.
down every single time.
Yeah. Well, every time it comes to Tulsa, at least, right?
Oh, absolutely. I like to come here. I bet it's really special being here. So
Great. Thank you so much.
yeah, thank you.
For everyone listening, I'll post the links in the description to Paula's bio and the website so you guys can check that out. And we will catch you next episode. Cheers. This podcast is presented by the Oklahoma Hall of Fame, telling Oklahoma stories through its people since 1927. Follow them online at oklahomahof.com and definitely on Instagram at oklahomahof.
Thank you for listening. We are inspired by those around us and hope that you are too. Make sure you subscribe to this podcast on your favorite podcast platform and leave us a review so we can keep telling your stories. For more great Oklahoma content, follow This Is Oklahoma on Facebook and Instagram.